None of it makes sense. The problem is that we're taught as children, this ball earth lie. And, you might ask as a child, what about the people in Australia? They're standing on the bottom of the globe, won't they fall off? And your teacher says, no, gravity. And you go, oh, okay. And you never go back to that question. But when you go back to it as an adult and start looking at it with a critical eye, right, the whole thing falls apart.
I wanted to put together just a short video to tell you the main reason why I believe the Earth is flat, and it is flat. There are literally, I'm not exaggerating, hundreds of reasons why I believe that the Earth is flat, that it's not a globe. But the number one for me is water. Water is always flat. Water always finds its level. All the oceans and the streams and the creeks run down into the basins, which is what we call oceans. Water always takes the shape of its container. So water is flat. Water seeks its own level. Therefore, the idea that we're spinning on a globe is absolutely impossible.
Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's a leading astronomer in America.
I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, bitch.
Tells us that the Earth is not a perfect circle. It is actually an oblate spheroid. It's squashed and wider at the equator. Yeah.
So, Earth, throughout its life, even when it formed, it was spinning, and it got a little wider at the equator than it does at the poles. So it's not actually a sphere. It's oblate, and officially it's an oblate spheroid. That's what we call it. But not only that, it's slightly wider below the equator than above the equator.
A little chubbier.
A little chubbier.
Yeah.
Chubby's a good word. It's like pear-shaped.
So my question to him would be, why is there land at the equator? Because water will move more readily than rock. So if the Earth is spinning, the water will be collected at the equator. I mean, if you spin a wet tennis ball, okay, you spin a wet tennis ball, the water shoots off at the equator, essentially. So all the water will be gathered around the equator. So why is there land at the equator? Doesn't make any sense. The other thing that about
Once again, double the curvature height of a because of the lens distortion, and we're back plane is level again. And where's the curve, Adam? Where's the curve? Either you're wearing fisheye lenses for glasses, or you're lying, man.
The world is the Nile River, which is actually almost 5,000 miles in total length. But as the crow flies, you can see it here, that the total length is about 2,400 miles from the source to the outlet. As we just saw, the length of the Nile River, and this is as the crow flies, from the source point to the ocean that it empties out into, is 2,400 miles, about 30% of the Earth's diameter. So if we take NASA's word for it that it's 8 inches per mile squared, this is what the math looks like. 2,400 miles times 2,400 miles times 8 inches. That gets us the total amount in inches. We divide by 12 to get the total amount in feet. Then we divide by 5,280 to get the total amount in miles. And there should be 727 miles of total curvature. We divide that by 2, and that means there would be 363 miles to the midpoint or the peak. The Nile River would have to ascend 363 miles, or a total of over 720 miles from the beginning to the end. It would look like this. If you see this here, this would be the source point. It would have to curve up 363 miles to the midpoint, and then it would have to curve down 363 miles to the end point. That's impossible. Totally
Bedford
impossible.
Levels is a canal that is perfectly straight for 6 miles. Okay, so what a chap called Samuel Rowbottom did was he took a telescope, put it in the water about 8 inches above the water, and he had a friend, in a rowboat with a flag on the back, row all the way to the other end, and he was able to see the flag on the back of the rowboat the whole distance. Now, according to spherical trigonometry, the curve of the Earth is 8 inches per mile squared. So over 5 miles, that's 5 times 5, 25, times 8, which is 200, works out, that's 200 inches, which works out at 16 feet. That means the boat should have been 16 feet below the horizon. He shouldn't have been able to see the boat. Now, you know, the scientists will say, oh, refraction and this and light bending around the Earth and stuff. But the fact is, you know, it's perfectly flat. And he in his book, he puts forward many arguments that show that, or many experiments that show the Earth is always perfectly flat. They say that you see the mast, you know, go down last. Is literally just the way your vision works. Yeah, it's perspective and atmospherics basically. The limit of your vision is supposedly 3 miles. And then after 3 miles, you're supposed to see the boat start to go over the horizon. It's funny that Neil deGrasse Tyson again says that, explains that you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane. He says this, you can't see the curvature of the Earth from a plane because you're not high enough. The Earth is so big that you can't get high enough to see the curvature. Yet, you can apparently see a boat go over the curvature over the distance of 3 miles, which doesn't make sense. The thing is, when you look out and you see a boat.
It's time for the Longines Chronoscope, a television journal of the important issues of the hour, brought to you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. A presentation of the Longines Wittnauer Watch Company, maker of Longines, the world's most honored watch, and Wittnauer, distinguished companion to the world-honored Longines. Good evening, this is Frank Knight.
Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this Earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
That's a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see
I
that?
say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, at the bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
Well, Admiral Byrd, world, nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold. There's only one permanent resident, that's the emperor penguin. The little ones live further north. I tell you one reason they're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime. Because it happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And
those things, that potential for international disagreement. We took an area that was 1.5 times the size of the United States and set it aside for peaceful purposes. Truly, truly amazing. But that was in 1961. So
the Antarctic Treaty was signed in Washington on December 1, 1959 by the 12 countries whose scientists had been active in and around Antarctica during the International Geophysical Year IGY of 1957-58. It entered into force in 1961 and has since been acceded to by many other nations. The total number of parties to the treaty is now 52.
The political history of Antarctica, and probably the most important question is, who's in charge? The treaty, you have to put yourself in the perspective of the time frame. This was an international agreement that was negotiated in 1959.
Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. Freedom of scientific investigation in Antarctica and cooperation toward that end shall continue. Scientific observations and results from Antarctica shall be exchanged and made freely available. Among the signatories of the treaty were 7 countries: Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, New Zealand, Norway and the United Kingdom, with territorial claims.
The Antarctic Treaty is a unique document in history. It's now recognized as one of the most successful international agreements ever negotiated.
Earlier, the area of the Antarctic Treaty that it covers is any area south of 60 degrees south. So when this ship reaches that location, we are covered under those provisions. This ship cannot burn heavy fuel south of 60 degrees. This ship cannot carry heavy fuel south of 60 degrees. So the captain and the engineers have calculated very carefully how much heavy fuel they have on board, and they will be burning that off before we get south of 60 degrees.
We say the ice wall, what we mean by that. A lot of the people who are skeptical are saying, if there's this great ice wall, how come there's no pictures of it? Well, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of pictures of the ice wall. So I think there are some misconceptions about what we mean when we say the ice wall. All we mean, when I say we, I mean myself and other flat earthers when we use the term ice wall, which is the wrong term to use. All we mean is the coast of Antarctica. And there are pictures of the coast of Antarctica and the Antarctic shelf all over the internet. Is the dome or the wall that Truman reaches. They think we're talking about like an igloo wall. That's not what we mean. We're not talking about the exterior part of Antarctica. We're talking about the coast. Just the ice that surrounds the water, the container of the earth.
So, you know, you can't fly over the ring and get anywhere. That's why we're not allowed to go there. I mean, think about it. It's the only treaty that's you know, all these countries have signed and never broken and completely agreed on. It's the only one. And, you know, what treaty is there that everybody's agreed on? We're being kept away from it for a reason. You know, they have some scientific bases there, yeah, and literally it's controlled by the military. If you try and go there by yourself, you will be sort of picked up and escorted back. There was a guy called Jarls Anderhoy who tried to. There was a guy called Jarls Anderhoy who tried to take a mission to the Antarctica, and he was picked up and taken back by the military. It's a good reason because they don't want you finding out what's beyond. A guy called Jarls Anderhoy who tried to take a mission to the Antarctica, and he was picked up and taken back by the military. It's a good reason.
A mile of natural beauty. Land and sea sculpted by one of the harshest climates in the world. This is unique, untouched land, not owned, not exploited. This is Antarctica. Covering nearly 10% of the globe, it's protected by a treaty that ensures it's used for peaceful purposes only, and in the interests of all mankind.
The Antarctic became an area of international research in the 1950s with the first crossing of the Antarctic by the Sir Vivian Fuchs and Sir Edmund Hillary. This was a period called the International Geophysical Year, and it was out of the International Geophysical Year that the Antarctic Treaty grew.
Signed in Washington, D.C. on the 1st of December in 1959, the treaty established the world's first international space by stating no claims to sovereignty could be made by the 7 claimed sectors on the grounds of activity in the area. At the same time, it became the first nuclear arms agreement, and today it's backed. Today, when the major challenges for civilization, climate change, depleted resources, are not national but global issues, there's ever-increasing pressure to find a new model for governance. The Antarctic Treaty could be it.
The other big issue, and this is actually the old station at South Cole, the other big issue was the continuing collaboration with a non-government organization, the Scientific Committee on Antarctic Research.
To begin, the distance between Sydney, Australia and Nelson, New Zealand on the ball Earth, given their coordinates and sparing you the spherical trigonometry, should be 1,310 miles. But the Australian Handbook, Almanac Shippers and Importers Directory states the measured distance as being 1,550 miles, which is a full 18% longer. And while on the ball Earth model, Antarctica is said to be a continent of ice situated at the bottom of the ball from 78 degrees south latitude, it should therefore not have a perimeter greater than 12,000 miles. However, early explorers like Captain Cook and James Clark Ross, in attempting to circumnavigate Antarctica, took 3 to 4 years to do so, and clocked in the distance traveled at 50 to 60,000 miles. That's twice the circumference of the equator. But the real proof for the flat Earth map is in the flight paths. On the ball Earth, several flights would have their shortest, quickest, and straightest path over or around the Antarctic continent. But instead, these flights take all manner of tangential detours, crossing into the northern hemisphere to refuel. Their reason? Antarctica's too cold, they claim. Wow.
Really got me interested was, as you say, the gyroscope. In a plane there is an artificial horizon, okay, and it's based on a gyroscope. And if you spin a gyroscope on a surface, it will want to stay upright. You can twist and tilt the surface as much as you like, the gyroscope will stay upright. So if a plane has a gyroscope and it starts following the curve of the Earth, the gyroscope would stay upright, which means the artificial horizon will start to roll backwards. But it doesn't. That's absolute proof that a plane flies over a flat surface rather than a curved one. Because I asked the pilot on my last flight, do you ever notice the artificial horizon rolling backwards? He said, no, but the artificial horizon has complex electronics in it to make sure it knows where it is on the Earth and it compensates. But I went to the manufacturer of the artificial horizon and they confirmed to me that it's completely mechanical, nothing electronic in it whatsoever. So it's literally just a gyroscope that can freely move. So that right there is proof to me that